I'm standing on the pedestrian bridge underneath the US Route 30 highway bridge that crosses the Fox River in the area between Oswego and Montgomery, Illinois. We're about 50 miles west of Lake Michigan. The Fox River starts in Wisconsin, comes down parallel to the Lake Michigan shoreline about 50 miles away from the lake, and then eventually empties into the Illinois River, which then goes down to St. Louis area in Mississippi. The area behind me right now is not frozen. The temperatures have been below freezing for days. There's a beautiful hoarfrost right now covering all the trees. It's really gorgeous out right now. But the cities that use the Fox River for the water source, Aurora and Elgin, empty their wastewater into the Fox River, and all of the other cities along this route don't get water from the Fox River, but they do empty their wastewater into the Fox River. And then we have bridges like this one that are heavily salted during the wintertime, and the runoff from those goes right into the river. So we have salty, warm water that keeps this area ice-free. And that's important because we have some Canada geese back here. We have tens of thousands actually between here and Oswego, a few miles downriver. There's some islands, a lot of shallow spots. So we have a lot of warm water here and a lot of shallow island areas that the Canada geese will stay on. Now, Canada geese are an interesting bird. There's a conservation success story actually going on behind me here. About 50 years ago, well, for longer than that, there's been about a dozen subspecies of Canada geese, and the giant one was thought to be extinct. And about 50 years ago, it was found in Minnesota, a small group, and they were captured and they were bred. Geese are easy to get to have more and more eggs, and so these Canada geese were put out to the departments of conservation across a bunch of Midwestern states where the giant Canada goose was originally native. And that way, if there was a disaster or a storm or something in one area, you wouldn't lose the population again. And so they were spread out across the Midwest. What they didn't know, unfortunately, was that this group of Canada geese, at least, and maybe others, don't migrate. They're wearing down jackets, and so they're comfortable in the cold. They're grazers, and so we've built a lot of retention ponds in the last 50 years in a lot of subdivisions, and we have shorelines of grass and backyards of grass around those retention ponds. So we have the water that they need and we have the grass that they need. Now right now there's a lot of them on the river here because the water is flowing, and because over the last few days there was some snow, and that snow has covered up their grass. The retention ponds are freezing and the grass around them is being covered up with snow. As soon as this snow melts, these geese will go back from the rivers back to the areas around the retention ponds to feed, and into city parks and other areas where there's lots of grass. But they'll come back to the river at night. So right now, there's not as many geese on this river as there normally would be, because today there's a lot of them flying around looking for grass. And I noticed yesterday lots and lots of geese flying south. So they were going down far enough trying to find areas that were not covered in snow so that they could continue staying close, but not starving to death up here. So geese don't have to eat every day. There is some food in the aquatic plants in the river, and so they will stay around as long as they can before they go farther and farther south. So a lot of these geese could be from Wisconsin and other areas farther north where they're not migrating from those areas, where they're just going farther and farther south. Now, when we see a lot of geese like this, we expect them to be all from the suburbs around us. But in this particular spot right here, I have seen geese with neck collars, which are PVC pipes that are put around the necks of some geese. They have different colors and different letter and number combinations. And the geese that I found, I sent those numbers off to Fish and Wildlife Service, and they sent me notes back saying that those geese had been banded at Hudson Bay in Canada, almost exactly 1,000 miles straight north of here. Not all these geese are local, and there's also other varieties, like I said, of Canada geese. Some of them are smaller, And so if you watch a bunch of geese flying over, sometimes you'll see small ones mixed in with large ones. Those are not the young ones of the year. When these geese are able to fly, they're as big as the adults. But the smaller varieties of geese sometimes come in here, and there's some varieties now, they're called Cackling Geese. They've been separated out from the Canada Goose. And those Cackling Geese have a little bit different call, and it's very distinct. And if you hear it, you'll know that that's not the normal Canada Goose. But when you see the groups flying over, you see flocks, you'll be able to tell that the smaller geese in there are not the same as these giant variety of the Canada Goose. When you see the flocks flying over, count the groups. A lot of times you'll see they're in multiples of 7s, or maybe there'll be 2 extra for a 9. Canada geese a lot of times have 5 babies, so you'll have 2 adults and 5 babies to get 7, and maybe 2 other adults that their nest was destroyed for some reason, and so you'll get 9. And you'll see 21s and then maybe a 23 or something sometimes. So you'll be able to see that the family groups as they fly over. If you have a goose problem in a small retention pond, how do you get rid of the geese? Well, they are federally protected, and so you can't harm the geese. There are people who train dogs to be able to chase the geese around but without catching them. You can spray, I'll put it on the words here, methylphenidate, which is an extract from grapes that has a very bitter taste that you can spray the grass. The grass does grow and get mowed, and it washes off, so you have to do that over and over again. Planting shoreline plants, aquatic hibiscus and irises and lots of other shoreline plants form a high enough barrier along the shoreline that's pretty for us to look at, but then the geese don't like wading through it because there's predators possibly in there, and so they like to be able to walk up onto a shoreline straight up into the grass. So if you have other stuff there, then they can't do that. That works really, really well. And so you can try swans, but they don't work very well on large lakes. A small lake they might, but in the wintertime you have to take them in, and then the geese can come back and feed along the shorelines if the snow is melted off. So geese will work to protect their nest and a small area of water around it, but they mix with geese pretty easily. So when there's not a nest to protect, and then the swans can attack people and pets and things too. So swans aren't necessarily the best way to go either. Another thing you might try if you're just trying to protect your own yard around a pond is to put what's called a scarecrow by Contact. I'll put the link right here. It uses a garden hose it has a spray head and a motion detector, and it'll detect things coming into the yard and it'll spray. It also works on raccoons and rabbits and other things around vegetable gardens. So it's a useful device to have for more than just the geese. So I use it in my fruit orchard and helps keep out the possums and raccoons. So I really like using a scarecrow. It's a sudden noise and hissing sound, and it sprays water and some motion. So there's a lot of things that help to keep the geese away from just your yard, not the whole retention pond. The easiest way to get rid of them, if somebody really wanted to do it on a federal level, would be to change the law so that you can put plastic eggs in the nest and remove the other eggs. Once there's 5 eggs in the nest, they'll stop laying, and you'll be able to harvest the eggs for food pantries or wherever, and then the other plastic eggs, of course, won't hatch, and so the population will go down. The increase of geese in the Midwest has led to another conservation success story, if you want to call it that. There's been an increase in the number of coyotes that have come into the Midwest. They feed on small geese and they feed on the eggs, and so there's been an increase in coyotes in the areas that have had the increase in geese. I had to move indoors. It was too cold and snowy out there. I wanted to tell you a little bit more about the Canada goose. The giant subspecies is not just a pest species in the United States, but they've been released in Europe, Japan, New Zealand, and South America. I don't know why anyone would do such a thing, but sometimes people are dumb. Geese graze on grass, so they are pests on golf courses, sod farms, sports fields, and homes near retention ponds or rivers. Retention ponds with grass shorelines are a perfect man-made habitat for geese. In the majority of urban areas, there's no hunting allowed and few natural predators, so the goose population grows rapidly. As you hear me often say, there is a biological balance between the top and bottom of a plant. You can't have more leaves than the roots can supply with water, and you can have more roots than the leaves can supply food down to the roots. When the geese eat the leaves of the grass plants near the shoreline of a pond, the roots are going to be smaller and fewer. These small, weak root systems can't stop the erosion of the bank like they could if the top wasn't grazed and the roots could grow big. Grazing geese cause shoreline erosion by killing the grass and by the action of dozens of 10-pound geese clawing their way in and out of the pond. Geese also eat grains like corn and wheat and can be seen in fields after planting, eating any seeds they can find, and after harvest to clean up any seeds that fall into the ground. What goes into the goose will come out of the goose, but it will now include bacteria. They are a source of fecal coliform bacteria in the ponds they use and on the lawns they graze on. Canada geese are also susceptible to avian influenza. Canada geese aren't just passive pests, they're very territorial. They will defend an area around the nest, which just might be placed next to the sidewalk entrance to a building. They might build a nest on the rooftop, but still defend the nest by attacking people who walk below the nest. They are monogamous and stay together until one of them dies. They also tend to nest in the same areas year after year. They usually nest near water, and in some years flooding can destroy the nest. They may start a new nest when that occurs early in the season. When the goslings hatch, they can walk, swim, and find food within an hour. Although they can start to fly in 6 to 9 weeks, they don't leave their parents until the following spring. At some point during the breeding and nesting seasons, the adults lose all of their flight feathers at the same time. This is common in ducks and geese and rare in most other birds. The adults regain the ability to fly about the same time as their goslings start to fly. If you want to reduce the population during this flightless period, they could be herded up and sent to processing plants, if you know what I mean. Even when Canada geese are not migrating, they fly in the familiar V formation, which often spreads out into a wavy line. The geese in the V have an easier time flying. When the lead bird tires, it will fall back into the formation to let another bird lead. During migration, they can fly around 3,000 feet high and have been recorded as high as 29,000 feet high. They can fly at 45 to 50 miles an hour, and when migrating, they can fly with the wind, but they don't seem to be hampered by flying against the wind. They can fly for hours at a time. Rest stops can be as short as just a few hours to as long as a day or two. Wild geese can live 10 to 20 years, so the geese you see near your house may be the same geese for many years to come. As I mentioned earlier in the video, if you have a goose problem in your landscape, shrubs and perennials over 2 feet tall along the shoreline can block them from coming into the yard. Dogs on a leash and the scarecrow motion-activated sprinkler can repel geese. And spraying commercial goose deterrent can stop them from eating the grass. Oh, and by the way, don't use grape Kool-Aid. It doesn't have enough active ingredient to work very well, and it contains sugar that could attract ants to your yard. The sugar-free variety will coat your yard in chemicals not designed to be sprayed on landscapes. So just use the EPA-approved goose deterrents. So in summary, geese in the wild are wonderful, but geese in your yard are not. This is Jeff with a Green Review. Thanks for watching.